Everyone, this is the next video in a series of videos that tries to explain a little more about the Holocaust and the notes that I have sent you. So I'm going to give this next part in two videos, and this is about phase 2 of the Holocaust. Phase 2 is the part that if you know about the Holocaust, this is what you know. This is the violent phase. This is the one with the camps. This is the one with Auschwitz and the medical experiments, the things that we are more familiar with. So let's begin. Well, phase 2 of the Holocaust starts when World War II begins in 1939. Phase 2 will go all the way until the end of World War II when the German armies are finally defeated in 1945. So I'll be reading much of this to you and trying to explain a little bit as we go along. So it says this: World War II begins. So as Poland is attacked in 1939 and the German army moves into Poland, the rounding up of undesirable people or people that could threaten the Nazi Germany rule in Poland are rounded up, sent to camps, and in most cases shot and done away with. So who would that be? That would be Polish government leaders, Polish professors, artists, politicians, even Catholic priests. People in Poland that might be able to organize some kind of revolt or counterattack against the Germans are the ones that are going to be taken away, those who have influence. Other Polish people, including Jews, and there was a large Jewish minority in Poland, were imprisoned into concentration camps at this time. By 1940, the German army is turned to head to Western Europe, and by the summer of 1940, places like Holland and Belgium and France have easily been taken. And wherever the German army goes, the Germans are going to round up, arrest, and take away people that can, one, threaten their potential rule there, but also people that are just undesirables. So you remember from the very intro, those undesirables would be Jewish people, political opponents, handicapped people, gypsies, habitual criminals, homosexuals. Those are the people that are arrested like they were in Germany earlier, but now wherever Germany goes, they'll be arrested in other countries too. They're rounded up and sent to camps. But it's really with the invasion of the Soviet Union in the summer of 1941 that the violent phase of the Holocaust, phase 2, really picks up. And that begins the campaign to annihilate the Jewish population. Up until this time, murder was not the main policy of the Nazis. The main policy for Jewish people was to go and leave and to get out of Germany. Well, whenever the German army went in and conquered land, there was always another group of soldiers that followed right after them. After the land had been secured, another group of soldiers called Einsatzgruppen, which translates into mobile killing squads, would move into the areas and arrest people in places like Poland or the Soviet Union in this case that could have been enemies or undesirables, and more often than not would shoot them on the spot. This group in one location at a place called Babi Yar killed 30,000 Jewish people. This Einsatzgruppen throughout the course of World War II, where Germany was fighting the Soviet Union, murdered 3 million Soviet prisoners of war. Next, at the same time, once farther into the east is secured, then people who were arrested in Western Europe are now sent on trains and sent to Eastern Europe. It says here that people in Europe were resettled in concentration camps, labor camps where they would have been forced labor, and ghettos. Ghettos are segregated communities in cities that the Jewish people are living. They're forced to live there. They're put in crowded, cramped conditions. The food supply that they have is very limited. And it was the hope of the Germans and the Nazis that in these cramped, crowded conditions, people would starve and get sick and that they would die. Eastern Europe was the location where the people were sent. No matter where in Europe they were taken from, they were generally sent to Eastern Europe because it was far away from Germany, and it was also places where the populations were smaller and people couldn't nose around or see what was going on. Especially when World War II started, it was very difficult for people to travel around, reporters to report on what was happening, and it was also difficult for news to get out of Europe. So the part two of the Holocaust was the violent phase, and it was the phase that the Nazis did their best to keep secretive. They did not want the world to know what they were doing because maybe the world might do something about it. So Eastern Europe was the location, and once the World War II got started, it was tough getting in to see what was going on and getting information out to know what was going on. We know that the German army was really, really good, and once it secured a location, chances are that location was going to be locked down. Next, it says here the final solution. You guys are very familiar, I'm sure, with that term. That is the phrase given to the official policy of Nazi Germany to eliminate the Jewish population. Um, Before that, the official policy was to have Jews move away from Germany and lands that Germany would control. It says here that the Jewish population, among millions of others, will be sent in phase two to death camps. All the death camps are located in Poland. Now, let me say this about the camp system. In every camp, whether it be a labor camp or a concentration camp, people did die. But there were 6 locations, all in Poland, that were constructed for the very purpose of killing people who made it there. And those places are Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka, Chełmno, Majdanek, and Auschwitz-Birkenau. I'm sure you've probably heard of some of these names before, and Auschwitz-Birkenau is the largest of all of them, and more people were killed at Auschwitz-Birkenau than any other location. Well, when people would arrive on the trains, the victims were taken off of the trains. Generally speaking, the men and the older boys were separated from the women and the children. Prisoners, if they were slated to be eliminated right away, were forced to undress. All their valuables were taken from them, and then they were taken to the gas chambers where they were told it was going to be a shower, and then they were gassed to death. Now, there are cases, especially at Auschwitz, where connected to Auschwitz was a huge factory complex. So if people came in that were healthy enough, then they would not be exposed to the showers immediately. They would go to a part of Auschwitz where they would become forced labor. But by and large, if you went to one of these death camps, the unfortunate result would be death. That'll be the end of part 1 of my description on phase 2.